We can now cross live to New Delhi to speak to Professor Dr. Shanthie D'Souza, founder, president of Mantraya Institute for Strategic Studies. Dr. Shanthie, great to have you on the show with me. With rising US-Iran tensions, how is India balancing closer ties with Israel without antagonizing Iran as Prime Minister Modi arrives in Israel?
Well, I think it's a time of geopolitical uncertainty and churning which is occurring. And as you mentioned, the tensions between US and Iran escalating and the fear of the regional conflict widening and spilling over. India has made this move with Prime Minister Modi's visit to Israel as a strategic step in a way of stabilizing situation in the Middle East, given the fact that there is a lot of geopolitical headwinds that India is facing, particularly with the complex neighborhood in South Asia and the US pressure, particularly in the region and what's happening in Iran and in the Middle East. I think this is a strategic move of balancing India's ties with Israel and also with the Middle East.
Modi and Netanyahu are expected to discuss defence, AI and trade. What defence or technology gains can India realistically expect from this visit to Israel?
I think it's significant given the fact that last year in May, during the conflict and the war with Pakistan, Israel weapons played a very instrumental and key role. And thereon, it's always been seen that Israel has been a reliable partner, and thereby defense, AI, cyber technology, cybersecurity, quantum have become the keystone of the strategic partnership between India and Israel. And if you know of the reports or the data which is being projected at the moment, India is emerging as the largest buyer from Israel, and also it's almost 34% of the sales which is occurring, which is significant. And more importantly, India is also moving towards self-reliance and indigenization, which is Atmanirbharta. And thereby, the fact that Israel is looking at India in terms of joint production and co-production of weapons is an important step. And India is definitely looking towards Iron Beam and Iron Dome. And given the fact that these weapons came in very useful during Operation Sindoor, between India and Pakistan in May 2025. I think the defense is a key and important segment of the relationship, and the counterterrorism aspect gains more credibility given the fact that Pakistan is looking of working with China, and thereby to counterbalance, India is looking towards working with Israel on weapons co-production and joint production.
And we've seen Prime Minister Modi in the Knesset today. How symbolic is this moment? He actually told MPs in Jerusalem that India stands with Israel firmly with full conviction.
I think it's significant given that India has come a long way from the time of 1948, when India actually didn't recognize Israel, to setting up relationship in 1992, and thereby the strengthening of the relationship from 2014, when Prime Minister Modi became the Prime Minister of India. So standing in Knesset and issuing such a statement actually depicts India's own story and pain India has gone through with terrorism. And thereby, I think on terror and counterterrorism, India stands with Israel. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't understand the difficulties the rest of the Middle East, particularly Gaza, faces. So I think it has to be taken with a pinch of salt, because beyond the optics and symbolism is also a role India is trying to play in the Middle East. And it is firmly stood by the UN resolve of having a mediated solution in Gaza.
Modi's trip to Israel has actually drawn criticism at home in India. Why are people expressing their opposition to his visit to Israel?
Well, I think the opposition stems from the fact that India had maintained a very good and close relationship with Palestine, and thereby now it's seen as being tilted towards Israel. So the opposition has a right to voice their opinion. But what India is doing now is in maintaining its strategic autonomy and a very delicate balancing act. So if you remember, there were just a few days back, there was an Arab ministerial meet in Delhi. And also India joined 100+ nations in condemning Israel's West Bank plans. So there is this whole game which is being played in terms of understanding the strategic moves which India is making at the moment. And the oppositions, while voicing the concern, are not looking at the larger picture, which Indian foreign policy at the moment needs to deal with, given the geopolitical headwinds India is facing.
And what messages or signals is India likely to convey to both Israel and Iran during Modi's visit? And how might this affect India's role as a regional stabilizer?
Well, I think India is playing a very delicate balancing act by the fact that it's not taking positions. It is voting in certain directions, as I mentioned. The fact that it stood with 100 plus countries in condemning Israel's position on the West Bank, having the Arab ministerial meet, continuing relations with Iran, where it has significant investments, particularly at the Chabahar port. So I think these are areas where there is a lot of fluidity and gray areas where India is working on. And definitely with Iran, it has very good and close ties. And thereby it will look at areas and ways of maintaining that relationship, despite however close it seems to be moving towards Israel. So there is a geopolitical chessboard at the moment where India is trying best to play an important role, because it can play a role given the fact that it has connections and networks inside the region, and thereby it needs to amplify on those and build on those voices inside the regions where you could, as an Indian Prime Minister at this point of time is looking at, become a key instrument in bringing peace to the region.
Professor Dr. Shanthie D'Souza, great to have you on the show. Thank you.
Thank you.